From the very beginning, as soon as we began seeing leaks and renders of the upcoming Pixel Fold and we saw this cover display, a lot of us felt like pretty immediately this was a cover display that we were going to be more at home using, and we're probably going to use more than the cover display on devices like Samsung's Galaxy Z Fold line. And for me, for a lot of us, this seemed like a pretty obvious positive change. However, now that the Pixel Fold has actually been out for a little while, we're starting to see something kind of interesting, something I'm going to dig into in this video. A lot of people are apparently using this screen more than they are using this screen, which is the one that you ostensibly bought the device to use. This has led to me getting literally dozens of variations of the very same comment. Why would you spend $1,800 to buy this device if you're going to primarily use the cover display, which is like using a normal phone? And this is a somewhat fair question that I think needs to be explored and answered. So in this video, like I said, we're going to dig into this. We're going to break this topic down. Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? What does it mean? And how does this kind of compare and contrast with Samsung's Z Fold? And I think the Z Fold is probably a really good place to start with that contrasting experience. Of course, the Z Fold does have this very narrow, very tall display. And I must admit that when I first saw this thing way back in the day, I thought that is a device that I'm probably not going to enjoy using. I'm probably going to end up using that tablet display most of the time. And in fact, after I got the thing, while my negative feelings on the cover display did soften quite a bit over time, I did still end up using that tablet display the vast majority of the time. And time is kind of the main subject of this video. How did I decide on the fly, should I use this screen or the tablet screen? The answer was almost always time. Was the interaction I was doing on this phone a very brief interaction? I was simply responding to a text message, quickly reading an email, something very brief. Well, then this was probably where I was going to do it. But if the thing I was doing was going to take a second, I was settling in to actually use the phone, I was going to open it up and use the inner tablet screen. It was about time, not the task, not necessarily what I was going to do, but more often, how long I was going to be spending with the phone in my hand. Now, of course, there are times when the task would be the main influencer. I'm speaking more broadly. There were times that there were particular apps, like I was going to watch a YouTube video or something. Well, then I'm going to open the thing up and I'm going to use that bigger screen. But again, more often than not, it was how long I was going to be spending with the phone. And I think that the most analogous experience that I can kind of give you to this actually came from me watching MKBHD's recent review of the Z Flip 5, where he talked about the fact that you have this really big cover display that can do most of the things you are going to want to do on your phone, and you can do it all from that cover display. But if you're actually going to settle in and use the phone, you're going to open it up and use that main screen. And as I'm listening to him say this, I'm thinking, that's pretty much exactly how I used this thing, because in my mind, I kind of conceptualized this device as a really, really great tablet, but not necessarily a great phone. This was more like a cover display than it is a true phone. And yes, I know that these are sorts of strange distinctions that I'm making potentially, but that's just kind of how I saw it. This was not a phone. This was a cover display on a tablet. Maybe that'll make more sense as I go forward and I talk about the Pixel Fold. And we'll just springboard directly from what I just said about the Z Fold. With the Pixel Fold, without any sort of pre-programming or pre-thought about this, I see this device differently. I don't see this as a cover display. I don't use it like a cover display. I use this like it is a great phone. There also happens to be a great tablet inside as well. And this way of framing it in my mind, again, not something I intentionally did, it's just how the form factor kind of presents itself to me, completely changes how I use this device on a day-to-day basis. I do end up using this outer display probably slightly more than the inner display. It's not like 80-20 or anything crazy like that. It's maybe 60-40, 70-30 at the most skewed, but I do think I probably use this display more. Now, the next thing we have to ask is, do I feel bad about that? Do I find myself using this device and thinking, I've got to open this thing up and get my money's worth out of it. I spent all that money for this screen. I got to open it and basically force myself to use that screen. And the answer to that question is absolutely not. Now, some people will feel differently. Some people will have the exact same experience that I'm describing and feel like they're not getting their money's worth, feel like they would have been better suited with a cheaper phone and then just buying a tablet to have around whenever they need it. But again, my subjective experience, that has not been the case. And there's a really big reason for that. And it is, again, going back to how I perceive this phone, how I use this phone, how I frame it and think about it in my mind. I don't think about it as a cover display on a tablet. I think about it as a great phone and a great tablet. And that is the distinction. This is truly two devices in one, whereas, again, my subjective experience, my subjective opinion, I never saw the Z Fold in quite that same way. It was always more of a tablet with a screen on top, not two devices. I can hear you guys already in the comments. How does that excuse the fact that you're using one of those two devices way more than the other? And I totally understand that, but it comes down to that earlier thing I was talking about. How was I deciding which screen to use? With the Z Fold, it was time. What is it with the Pixel Fold? It's not time. It's the task at hand. There are certain tasks where they are just going to be better suited for this cover display, for what you would call the Pixel Fold phone mode. And for those tasks, I quite happily use the phone mode, and it works really, really well. I love this cover display. It's really easy to one hand for me. I just love the proportions of it. It's like having a really, really good like miniature phone or like smaller end flagship. It's funny that this is considered a small phone these days, but phones have gotten so outrageously out of hand, if you will, large. This just feels so comfortable to me. So again, a lot of these sorts of things, like maybe I'm scrolling through social media, reading an email, text messaging, they feel fantastic on this device. If this were a phone, I would probably buy and want to use this phone because the proportions are fantastic. However, there are other tasks that are simply better suited for a larger tablet screen. Perhaps I'm going to settle in and get some work done. I want to multitask and have two apps open at once. That is going to be something I'm going to open up this device for because the task calls for it. I do not feel restricted in any single way. No matter what it is I need to do or want to do, I have two devices which cover the entire gamut of possibilities of things that I might want to do. So I simply transform this device into the form factor that best fits the task at hand, and then I do the task at hand. And because of that, sometimes I use this screen more, sometimes I use the cover display more. It just depends on what I'm trying to do. But again, no matter what it is, I have the right answer to the problem in my hand or in my pocket already. If you buy a Swiss Army knife and you primarily use the blade, you don't feel bad that you never use the corkscrew because it's there when you do need it and it's really valuable in those moments. Now, again, I want to very heavily express to you that there are going to be Samsung Z Fold users who feel the exact same way as I do about the Pixel Fold about the Z Fold. This comes down to your own sensibilities. For me, I never found this cover display to be comfortable enough to treat it quite the way that I do the Pixel Fold. If you do, and all of what I just said applies to this phone for you, I'm happy for you. It sounds like you found a device that is a really great fit for you. For me, the Pixel Fold is that better fit. And what I'm noticing in my comments and in the discussions around this device are that it seems like for a lot of Pixel Fold users, that is going to have been the case, that the Pixel Fold is just simply more comfortable to them and for them does indeed feel like having two devices in your pocket, a transformative experience, a phone that can become a tablet rather than a tablet which happens to have a cover display. This is not one of these situations where there is a right or wrong answer. This is very, very subjective, and I personally love the fact that these two devices both exist because they are different enough. I've made videos talking about prototypes of the Z Folds that are, shorter and wider, or maybe just wider. Why doesn't Samsung do that? Honestly, deep down, I kind of hope that they stick with this and then we get, the OnePlus Open, which is kind of like this but bigger, and then maybe we get another foldable down the line, which is kind of like this but wider. More choice for everybody is good for everybody. So that's kind of where we are with these two devices. That's kind of how I see them and how I use them. And hopefully that is some usable and, dare I say, even valuable information for some people out there that are wondering about how these devices are both being used and, maybe wanted my opinion on them. Maybe they'd seen reports of people using the Pixel Fold cover display more, and they wanted to know what that was about and what people that own the device thought about it. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. This is just what I think after over a month using the Pixel Fold. So I wanted to share this with you guys and get that conversation going in a constructive and hopefully interesting direction. Guys, subscribe for more content just like this. If you want to save money on your cell phone bill, maybe check out my channel partner link down below, Mint Mobile, to do exactly that. Be like me, save hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars on your cell phone bill, guys. I'll see you on the next one. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.